Hello and welcome everyone. Our next session is Domestic and Regional Tourism Rising from the Ashes. We have two very notable panelists. The first hardly needs an introduction. Tan Sri Tony Fernandez, the CEO of the Air Asia Group, a Awana Music top executive before pursuing his dream of starting a budget airline. Tan Sri Tony founded Tune Air Sdn Bhd, who introduced the first budget no-frills airline, Air Asia, to Malaysians with a tagline, "Now everyone can fly." Joining him is Dr. Edward Holloway, Executive Vice President for Leisure and Hospitality at Resorts World Genting. Dr. Edward has been with Genting Malaysia Berhad for more than 15 years. Genting Malaysia Berhad operates a tourist resort in Genting Highlands, which includes hotels, restaurants, casinos, and recreational and amusement facilities. The company, through its subsidiaries, also develops and leases property, operates leisure and hospitality services, and provides timeshare ownership schemes. This session will be hosted by Jennifer Ong, and please welcome your moderator, Frida Liu.
Thank you, Dr. Yasmin. Welcome back to the studio. I'm Jennifer Ong.
And I'm Frida Liu. So our topic for the airlines and travel segments is about domestic and regional tourism rising from the ashes. COVID-19 threw all Malaysia-based airlines actually around the world a curveball and caused a severe blow to the aviation industry in 2020. From travel restrictions to flight cancellations, the airline industry has been the hardest hit industry during the COVID-19 pandemic, with thousands of layoffs and debt restructuring after the MCO in March 2020 to preserve cash flow. The leisure sector has not been spared either by the pandemic, and the future will be indeed challenging. With international travel cut off, the leisure industry players see the domestic market as its lifeline and route to recovery. And joining us this afternoon is Tan Sri Tony Fernandez from Air Asia Group and Dr. Edward Holloway from Resorts World Genting to talk about the impact of the pandemic on the aviation and leisure industries and how they are rising from the ashes of the pandemic. Good afternoon, gentlemen, and of course, Jennifer. So the International Air Transport Association IATA estimates the global industry will lose $252 billion in 2020. Many airlines are cutting up to 90% of their flight capacity. So what future does the airlines have, and how will it aim to recover? And this is obviously to you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Frida. Thank you, Jennifer, for inviting us here. What future do we have? That's a good question. I think if you asked me this question 12 months ago, I wasn't sure. But, we know there's an end. We know there's an end. We don't know exactly where that end is, but we now have vaccines. We now have better testing. We have countries such as Israel and the UK. The UK yesterday had less COVID infections than Malaysia. And not too long ago, it had 55,000 a day. So we know that the vaccine works. It's just now a matter of vaccine supplies being rolled out to various parts of where we fly. And then, firstly, for domestic borders to open, and then international borders to open. But I think what's very clear in my mind, in the periods where there has been a little bit of flying over this last 18 months or so, demand is very, very strong. People are desperate to get out. And so that's the most important thing to me, that there is demand. The rest is just being patient, something I'm not particularly good at, but you don't have a choice. Just sitting around, waiting to be jabbed and waiting for 30 other million Malaysians to be inoculated. The key for us is that we're slightly better in that 50% of our capacity is domestic. And then the other 50% is really regional, which I think will be the first to bounce back, in that you're more likely to see travel in the same time zone than flying across to Los Angeles or places like that. So I'm very optimistic. At least I know there's an end. I'm frustrated waiting, but we've been through 15, 16 months of this, maybe 4 or 5 more months.
But I know that during this period, you haven't been quiet outside the aviation industry, and we'll talk about that later. Dato Edward, what's been happening on your end?
Well, I've been climbing mountains and more mountains and more mountains and jungle trekking every weekend. We've been working harder than I've ever worked before in Genting. As a company, if you look back to 1998, we started building in the middle of that crisis. We started building a 6,000 bedroom hotel. And we have been working so hard to prepare ourselves for life after this pandemic. So in terms of the theme parks, that's the big news, obviously, for Genting. We've seen around us a lot of the big IPs that have actually closed up shop in Malaysia, which is such a pity because we were embarking on a country that's going to have a lot of offerings of IP, and unfortunately some of them have left us. They're very highly intensive in terms of capital, and how we're going to bounce back, I think we've got to be very price sensitive. Okay. You know, our market is obviously Malaysia. Our companies and AirAsia are not too dissimilar. We cater for the mass market. And we will definitely be price conscious as we open and rebuild ourselves. But I think the two brands that we have are probably the biggest nationally grown brands in Malaysia, Genting and AirAsia. I mean, who's bigger in terms of the hospitality industry? So I think the strength of our brands will help us get through. Right. And then how do we build it up from there onwards? Obviously ourselves, and we can talk that later. We've got some new assets. We've been working hard to operate in a new world.
Right. Okay. We'll talk about the new assets as well. So, you were saying, Tony, with vaccines, there is an end. We just don't know when that end's going to be. And will it bring travel back to normal? And is the trend of contactless convenience the way forward for airlines post-pandemic?
I mean, I think we know where the end is going to be. It's between now and December, right?
Yeah.
We know that most countries would have reached this herd immunity kind of by December. But from August time, more than 50% of populations are going to be vaccinated. We're now seeing, and it's going to be a bell-shaped curve because the Western world took an enormous amount of supply of the vaccines. Right. Now in America, they actually got too many vaccines. And so supply is going to get better for all of us here, maybe with a blip in India. So that we know the end. On the extreme end, December, but I'm predicting probably August and September. Contactless travel, I mean, it's definitely going to happen. That's not a reason for, because of COVID. Right. I mean, we've been trying to do this for a long, long time, but we've had the dreaded Malaysian airports and people like that to work with. We want contactless. We want self-service. We want to make it easier using data for our customers to move around. But one of the benefits of COVID is that digitization has happened. That even dinosaurs want to be in this space. And so that's going to be very helpful for us going forward. But I mean, I don't think humans as a nature, and it's great to see Israel and some other countries now beginning to take masks off and going back. We like contact, right? I can't imagine a world where we don't contact. That's the biggest problem, is that now we need less contact, but we can't resist it. When we go up to Genting, we all want to have a beer and get close to each other, except next to Edward. But I don't think we want a world which is contactless and we're not, we're doing everything virtual.
Right. And so I want to know as well, like your view, right? Will it be mandatory for traveling in the future? This whole idea of a vaccine passport or digitalized way to track travelers' medical records when entering countries or moving between states is something that,
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the paranoia of the country, but I think certainly in Asia, we are paranoid. Okay. So I can't see us getting away from no vaccine passports.
Right.
I imagine even, I mean, in England they're talking about it, that if you want to go watch a football game or you want to go watch Bon Jovi in concert, you'll have to show that you've been vaccinated. So maybe going up to Genting and on those crazy rides that I have no fathom why people want to do, you might need to show to enter Genting, right? I think that's a fact. Remember, well, you guys are younger than me and Edward, but we used to travel around with these yellow booklets, you know, the UN, WHO, which showed which vaccines you had when you entered certain countries, right? To show that you had these vaccines. So it's not a new norm. It's just, we have to get used to it. I want to go back to 9/11. I started the airline in 9/11, after 9/11, when everyone predicted the end of the world. No one's going to travel, security is going to... And yes, security became difficult, that you virtually wore nothing when you went through security. Otherwise, you'd have to take everything off anyway. So you got used to it, right? You got used to the security protocols. You got used to the extra immigration questions in America when you arrived. So there'll be some new health protocols. We'll all get used to it. I'm, again, you know, I think like Edward, our brand is strong. The demand is there. You know, I mean, I know people are desperate to get back to Genting. Any excuse, right? People want to get out. Hospitality, tourism has made that moment maybe 10, 15 years ago when leisure was a luxury. Now leisure is a necessity. People are used to it. It's that CD moment, right? For the older ones here.
I get you.
When you went, you know,
that CD moment.
Back to the earlier question, right, Frida? You're talking about the contactless. To what extent, Tony, that AirAsia would implement contactless features as far as air
well, we
is
want to
concerned?
do it anyway from a cost side.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously it's what people want anyway.
Yeah.
But, you know, we think checking in at a desk is old-fashioned.
Yes.
You can do it on your mobile phone, right? I think the hotel industries, can you imagine a scenario where you can check in and just go straight to your room with a key, right? That'd be my dream.
Oh, you should come to our hotel.
There we go. I did. And the beauty of digitization is making it simpler. So the contactless part is cost, plus also convenience.
Right.
And now there's a health side to it.
Right. Right. And for me, I mean, like just Changi Airport, they've done a great job. Terminal 4, which
Everything just zoom in, right? What about your
yeah,
side?
on your side, yeah.
What
Well,
kind
I mean,
of contactless feature?
If you know, we've got the biggest hotel in the world, right? It's over 7,000 bedrooms. We've been following or in tandem the same as AirAsia. You don't need to go to a counter for the last 5 years. People have asked us how we do it. We built it in-house. We've taken that another step. So you can imagine a 90% full hotel, 7,500 rooms. Nobody goes through a counter. You check in, get your key and go to your room, put your key out and then you're out again. So yeah, we've been doing that. And I agree with Tony. In all of our businesses in the last 1.5 years, we've totally, excuse me, we've totally put it upside down. And it's not a question of the health side of it necessary on the contract. It's just about pure efficiency. We all, you know, having tough times, and we've had to dig deep and change our thought process and say, how can we do this better and more efficient? Not have, you know, so many receptionists on the counters, and you know and it's all about efficiency. And I think one of the many good things that have come out of this has taught us to rethink, reset, and that's what we've been doing for the last year. We've been resetting everything from our leisure, hospitality, gaming operations, and a total different place, totally different place.
Right. And are we prepped should something of this sort happen again in the future? I mean, in terms of how we operate.
Oops, so.
Frida, we're just getting out of this one. Can you not talk about the next one?
Yeah, so,
Where have you brought her from?
No, look, we've gone through this all. We've gone through 98, we've gone through H1N1, we've gone through SARS. I've experienced that in Malaysia. I've been here for 25 years, so we know the drill. This one was just a little longer than the last one, but it's not a question of when. It's only a question of when again. But I think we've all become smarter. We've all looked at those issues that hound us from day to day on the health side. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen. But good companies will always have a disaster recovery program. It must be robust. You must be able to make decisions quickly, especially in a volume business. Like I think both of our businesses, if we're going to wait for next week to make a decision, we're dead. So we've got to make quick decisions. They sometimes are painful, but for a long term, they are necessary. And I think that one of the good things that came out of it, that we can look at how to be more efficient. And it's going to happen again.
Right.
We just got to manage it better.
Yeah. Well, okay. Developments for Air Asia Group. What are some developments? And I think there were some things that you had to pivot to.
Yeah, I mean, we started that journey maybe 18 months before COVID actually set in. And I mean, just to talk about COVID for 1 second, and will there be another one? I hope there won't be. I hope we're better prepared for it, that it can be contained. I think a lot of this was just unknown, and I think now people are more prepared, hopefully. And echoing Edward, I've been through exactly all those, from all those financial crises to bird flu, SARS. I thought I'd seen it all, but this is something else. I mean, this is another league, right? Completely. And so going back to your question, which is, we were obviously toying around with this whole data because we have fantastic data. We have very, very rich data, which over the last 19 years, I had kept very jealously to ourselves. Not that I saw this data revolution, but I always wanted to have the customer contact, good or bad. And we've been slammed in the press for refunds and all kinds of things, right? But I'd rather people come directly to us than through an intermediary. So we have very high quality of data. It's slightly higher spend. It's KYC'd. And so we began this journey of using our data to build some other businesses. Now, COVID is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now, could we have moved as fast as we did while we're running 245 planes and carrying 100 million people? Probably not. But by having to sit down in your house and do Zoom calls every day, you are able to focus and really pivot much quicker. And so we've now created, our version of a super app. We have a long way to go, but the building blocks are there to what I like to term as an AirAsia way of life, which is always about serving the underserved. And then we've gone out and built a fantastic logistics business, which could be bigger than the airline business one day. I mean, really, it's a diamond in the rough, which we never noticed before. Cargo was just, we were a prostitute. We were just selling our belly space to the highest bidder. But now we've gone out and gone downstream and built a vertically integrated business. And then the next element of that is a fintech business, Big Pay, which shows the power of our data. Because we don't have a sugar daddy, who gave us billions of dollars to go do what Grab or GoJet, all these guys did. But with our data, we're able to build Big Pay, which now has 1.2 million customers and a very high GTV and remittances growing at 100% a month. And so that proved our data concept. So Big Pay is very exciting. And it all ties into the ecosystem, right, in terms of suppliers. So then we got two other smaller businesses where we're looking at helping farmers and then an educational establishment, which was set up to reskill our own staff. Now, pre-COVID, and I think a lot of people in the hospitality business are going to be faced with this, as we've just talked about contactless and less receptionists and check-in assistants. I saw a lot of great staff in AirAsia who were going to be out of a job, not through their own fault, but through this industrial revolution, this 4.0. So we built an academy to reskill our staff into data engineers and data scientists, and that's called Red Beat Academy. And that's now taken a life of its own to becoming a profit center, as many companies are short of talent and using their own staff to reskill.
Right. What's the story with farmers, that you're working with farmers?
Farmers was really that, we've been carrying food for years, fish from Sabah. Everything. As I got stuck into it, I saw that farmers made very little money, actually. and the supply chain took all the profits. So we decided to help farmers by cut the supply chain, increase their margins by 15%. So we created a marketplace where they can sell their goods, one directly to restaurants, and two to consumers via our super app. And in a very short period of time, we've now got 1,200 farmers. And once things open up, then you could order fish from Hokkaido and we could deliver it to you within 48 hours. That's the dream, but the initial idea was to help farmers earn a little bit more income and provide better food security.
Okay. What about with Resorts World, the new assets you want to talk about?
Okay. By the way, we're talking a lot on all these wonderful ideas together, which is an exciting initiative that they've done. Yeah, well, obviously the big one is Skyworld. So I wore my Skyworld shirt today, did a bit of free advertising.
Zoom in on that, okay?
Zoom in, yeah. Of course, that's been, we've got to say, it's the most long-awaited park in Southeast Asia. And yes, unfortunately it was. And it's been a tough one for the last 1.5 years, bringing in people, because we're at that stage where we starting to tweak all the machinery, the rides and all that kind of thing. But the good news is we did release quite recently that we should be open up in third quarter. We're just locking in some dates. We're ready. It's looking amazing. But that's been an ongoing project, and it's going to be something that Malaysia will be proud of, and definitely pre-COVID, we are doing up to 28 million visitors a year. And whilst we don't expect to get that straight away once the borders open, it's going to be an added value for us to bring more people to Malaysia. No question. But of course, we start off with the domestic market.
Right.
The key, of course, is what price levels we pitch it at. But it's going to be a super cool experience for families, for young ones, he doesn't ride roller coasters, but I do. But anyway, there's some really cool experiences. And that's the big one we all know about. We've been waiting for it. But, over the last 1.5 years, we've re-looked at our business and how we do it. One of the things that I'm spending a lot of time right now is looking at the mid-hill, because if you recall in 2013, that's when we went into what we call our Genting Integrated Transformation Plan.
Right.
That's where we spent all the big billions of dollars and stuff like that. So that's almost finished with the opening of the theme park. We've got everything going. We've got our skyways and shopping malls and new hotels and stuff like that. So, but we've got a little secret gem coming out. We've been focusing a lot on the mid-hill, where Awana is. And we've already started. We've put in a really cool brand called Ayu. It's a day club at our pool. It's a Zook brand, one of our partners. So very much millennial, 45 minutes away from Kuala Lumpur. And in and around the whole area, we've been creating the most amazing jungle tracks. You can't believe that mountain, how many beautiful waterfalls it's got. And nobody's ever really explored it. So I think during COVID, a lot of people started the walking, the trekking, the hiking. It's become now the norm. And I reckon once we open up the borders, interstate borders, you're going to see a lot of people that are like-minded people, healthy, conscious of the nature. It's super cool. You should have seen what came out that mountain where during the COVID period, monkeys that you'd never have seen before. Gibbons is right in front of my door at Awana. That they're such shy animals, and they all came back, and that whole mountain is living again, and that's a super cool thing for most of those like-minded people that like the outdoors, that embrace nature. So that's another very, very cool product that we're going to have, and lots of it. And then of course we've got. We were pretty generous with all of our tenants. I think as a landlord, we engaged. We knew that they're in trouble, and we assisted them a great deal, and I think they appreciate it. So we've got most of the people that are staying on, And we've got a long list of people that are going to be opening up once we get the borders open with additional lifestyle products. We're probably going to have the best steakhouse in Malaysia called Wolfgang's. That's kind of a cool brand. And Five Guys burgers. And so we've got a lot of these international brands also going to be opening up to the new life after the borders open. So really exciting. Can't wait for inviting everybody up there. Because
How many
it's,
restaurants that by the time you open, how many F&B outlets would you have by then?
I mean, pre-COVID, we had 140 ours and the third parties. We'll probably go down to about 120. But believe it or not, I've opened up 3 new restaurants in the last 6 months. Really cool thing. And we're practicing. You know, we were ready. We were going to open them. So let's open them. Let's practice them. And you know, I've got a hot pot that's got a bigger than this whole area organic farm inside there. And so we've got these cool products that is affordable, lifestyle. It's not necessarily expensive, but it can be afforded by everybody. And I think everybody that comes up, they're going to say, wow. You know, they haven't been sitting on their laurels.
Right, and it's a great time right now before the crowd arrives to actually start, you know, prepping for it as well. You know, Tony, you said something very interesting though. You know, you said like the logistics could be bigger than aviation, and you're in education, and you're in, you know, food and all that, right? Is that a conscious decision to not just be in the aviation space?
Well, I mean, as I said, this started before COVID. When you're an airline, you're never going to get the greatest valuation in the world, right? I'm still scratching my head saying, how is Grab worth $40 billion US? When it actually has no real assets. And so that, you know, prior to Grab, there was Uber and everyone else. And I suddenly thought, well, we've got better data assets than some of them, and we've got better brand, and we've got better conversion levels. So they embarked the journey to maximize the assets in the company. So I think if you know, I was blown away by Genting. I'm not saying this was Edward's here, but, you know, I was invited up for the weekend, and I hadn't been up to Genting for a long, long time, really a long time. And it's incredible what they have done with the land that they have and the assets that they have that have been given to them. And that's kind of what we've done at AirAsia, right? While people traditionally see planes as the asset, etc., you know, we have developed a food business, Santan, our airline food. Whether we're successful or not, time will tell, but we have 12 restaurants in a very short period of time. So one of our biggest assets was our data. And rather than keeping it locked up in a data server in the airline business, we decided to use that to go and build some other businesses. Our asset was our website. We are one of the largest apps in ASEAN. So controversially, I said, well, let's open it up to everybody. You know, why don't we become an Expedia and an Agoda? Which everyone kind of looked at me like, you know, what drugs are you taking? And I said, look, don't kid yourself. Before they buy an AirAsia ticket, they are searching around. It's not exclusively before they buy a Genting hotel, they'll go and search other websites and stuff, right? The internet has brought transparency to pricing. And so, you know, if someone's better than us, then we deserve to be kicked anyway. So I decided to use our assets, such as our data, such as our brand and our website, to go and build some other businesses. It was conscious, and it's a natural part of growing, right? Genting started just as one hotel. When I turned up and I saw, you know, 7,000 rooms and all the stuff they were doing, from high end to low end, that's maximizing your asset, right? So we're both doing the same thing.
Interesting, right? The leverage is on the data, right? And what you can do with the data, and both of you obviously have a lot of data. You know, back to what we're talking about right now, the airlines and hotel space, right? People, of course, will need and want to travel again when the pandemic is over, for sure. So which airline or hotel survives and thrives will largely depend on what specifically? We'll start with you.
Well, okay, I go back to the point, we've got strong brand. So that we've got a little bit of a step forward, right? The earlier discussion on efficiency. We're all in business. We're not a charitable organization, right? So we're all in business. So we've had to really look at not relying on anybody or any organization or anybody but ourselves to make sure that we come out of this more efficient.
Right.
And if we do that, we will survive, for sure. We saw in July, August, September last year, I mean, it was free for all. There were occupancies, we were full, all those
Numbers
kind of
were
things.
controlled.
They were amazing. So the demand's definitely going to be for both of us, no question about that. But it's how we come out of it in a business sense, in a commercial sense, in right price point, in efficiencies. And I can't stop talking about efficiencies.
Right.
Using technology to become efficient. I'm sitting here, and Tony and I had quite a few discussions. We do a lot of brainstorming. He's a great guy to sit with and listen to. But we have so many things that we're similar in our business. And I'm lucky enough to work for a similar boss as Tony that really looks at that creativity, but is very steadfast on the business acumen. And that big word called data, that's our strength. That's how we both grew.
Right.
And, I can tell you how many times you stayed in my hotel, when you stayed in my hotel, what you like to eat. I know everything about you. And that's really important. So I think it's those people that have...
Who you stayed with.
Oops.
So I think we will all get through it. And those that didn't, there's going to be some very unlucky people.
Right.
And there's going to be some people that just didn't look at how to do it differently. But the good ones will stay. There are casualties, but I think both of us are quite confident there's an end to the tunnel, and we'll get through it and have a better experience for our customers.
Right. Tony, for the aviation industry, how do we ensure, what will be the success factor in terms of surviving and thriving?
Well, I mean, it's quite straightforward. You've got to have creditors who believe in you and will support you through this period. And creditors means banks and your suppliers. In our case, leasing companies and Airbus. And you'll need enough capital to survive the lack of sales that we're having. And if you can pivot, then even better. The reality is that pivoting into a digital business cannot replace 12 billion of revenue, overnight. It's going to take time. So I think it's just, the financial world, which is all we're reliant on, will go and pick those who they believe can win and come out stronger, and those who will perish away. It's Darwinism, really. It's the fittest. It's the survival of the fittest, right? Yeah. So, Edward said it, really, and it's ironic both of us have the same color, but strong brands are going to be what is a big factor, right? The second one is, Edward said it about 10 times, and it's nice to hear someone else saying it, low cost and efficiency, right? Price is going to be very important in our space. And I believe people will look for value in everything, whether it's the high end or the low end. So, while Genting controls most of its efficiency levels, we rely on airports, we rely on air traffic controllers, and others to make sure that they're efficient as well. But the key, which I think the buzzword for both of us is productivity. Right? I think on top of a strong brand, we got to have high productivity to ensure that we can give the best unit costs and the best value to our clientele.
Right. And what do you think the future face of your various customers will look like? I mean, price conscious, value, you're saying that will be the future, as we look ahead when people can, travel freely, live freely, will the behavior has the consumer behavior changed?
From my perspective and our business, and looking at the business in Malaysia, it's always been a price-sensitive market, so nothing's going to change there. It's just we still don't know what the economic impact's going to be. We know what the health and the volume business is, but we don't know what the economic impact is. Be that as it may, I just lost my train of thought there for a moment. It's not going to change in terms of our customers, just how much is in that wallet after COVID. I think everybody's wallet's going to shrink. And then who gets part of that wallet? How do we make it cheaper for that person to come and still make our margins so that we can pick it up again? But yeah, it's going to be pretty tough. There's not going to be too much money around. Not going to change much.
Yeah, I'm a little bit contrarian, only because there are two ways it could go. One is there are enormous amount of bubbles in our economy. Now, these bubbles have created huge amounts of liquidity. Like every Tom, Dick, and Harry is investing in Bitcoin or the stock market. You only have to look in America with Robinhood, and then plus there's a huge amount of liquidity driven by the stimulus package that had been given out in the West, which obviously benefits us because there's a drive in consumption, which helps the factories in our part of the world and then helps both of us with more disposable income. So I think we're a little bit, I sit there still bemused that the Dow Jones can be hitting the numbers that it's hitting and the values of market capitalizations that you're seeing right now. So there is a lot of liquidity there. Right. And that could just help us avoid a very deep recession. Really, we should be in a massive recession right now.
Right. Yeah.
But there's a lot of liquidity in the system, which is driving. You only have to look, and I look at numbers like the ports to look at the trade flows, and the port numbers are very encouraging, the import-export. And you only have to look when the Suez Canal was blocked. How did that ever happen, by the way? But anyway, I reckon all the Indians were watching the cricket match on the boat. Again, exactly. And then they just managed to forget to steer the ship in the wind. But I think we might just miss it. And I think you may, after periods of great economic shock, there's a massive amount of growth. So, and the biggest beneficiaries, if I can go back to the 1930s for those who are depressed, because we're in the most depressive industry right now, let's be real about it. I came from the music business, as Yasmin mentioned. 1930 was the Great Depression, right? The biggest era for Hollywood was straight after that, right? And that's where his counterparts, Disney, built Disney World, and people wanted leisure. People wanted to run away from. Right. So I do think we're in a nice spot if we can survive these next 4 or 5 months. There are going to be various degrees. I'm just looking at everyone here. Some got 75 masks on them, and others have got none. So it shows how human behavior is incredibly different in this world. But I think in the next 4 or 5 months, we will come to an end of it. And I'm looking forward to going up to Genting and seeing it packed to the brim. Right. There's nothing like that. And seeing our planes full. Yeah. Right. And seeing airports full again and people smiling. They're not always smiling because if we have delays, then people want to kill me. But, delays are a function of life. It's the only time in my life we have no delays because we only have 10 planes flying. Yeah. And we haven't lost anyone's bag. So I think we might just avoid a recession. We might just avoid. At the bottom end, there may be some wallets which are slightly smaller. But I think economic activity will pick up quite dramatically. And there's a lot of liquidity in the market. So we may just be lucky. And I think the hospitality and leisure industries will be the biggest beneficiary of that.
I'd like to end on that fairly optimistic note.
Better than your note on when's the next one.
I won't ask
we haven't
that
finished
question.
this one and you're talking about the next one.
I'm not going to ask the last question. Dato, anything positive that we can, because I like that.
I told you about skyworlds and climbing mountains and,
that's something...
and getting back to normal. Absolutely, we'll get out of it. You asked about price consciousness. Definitely, it's going to be there. But my goodness, I only refer to July, August, September last year.
Right.
The country went crazy. It was fantastic. You know, after 9 months of I said, that's going to happen. And then it won't just stop, because then the international borders will open, and I'm going to be able to fly overseas and see my kids. Yay! Hi,
Okay.
kids, if you're there. It's going to be amazing. I haven't seen them for 1.5 years. So, yeah, it's got a lot of cool things that are happening, and there's a lot to look forward, and we're going to come out of this better than we were before we were.
I think the key thing for everyone on the listening in is there are two ways of dealing with this. We can put our heads in the sand and cry about it, or we can use this time to reset, restructure, become more productive, find new ways of income. I mean, this TV program is a way of you kind of, you know, restructuring yourself from a magazine to something more interactive. So we've all kind of adapted, and I'm optimistic.
Right. Okay. Reset, restructure, rebuild. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We've come to the end of our Airlines and Travel segment. I'd like to thank our speakers, Dr. Tony Fernandez and Dr. Edward Holloway, for sharing their insights with us on Hospitality Asia channel. We will take a short break. Look out for our next session on the Industry Association segment, and it's happening at 4 p.m. Stay tuned.